Hello, welcome to Hell. That's the talk today we are going to look at, and I'm just trying to see whether I can get this Google Hangout to work, and doesn't work. Okay, right, let's have a look. Okay, I think it's going to work now. Let's make a start again. Welcome to Hell. This is a talk about Hell. 13 ways to make sure you will end up in Hell. Let's have a look. The first one is, I'm just going to go through all the different ways and all the different methods which will make sure that you end up in Hell. Hopefully, I hope that you don't intend to go there, but we will have a look and see what are the common problems we have, which eventually end us up into Hell. We're going to start up as like a chart list for all the listeners on Seismic Radio. You obviously can't see, so I will explain what is here on the slides. If you watch on YouTube, I apologize, since you obviously can see what's on there. But anyway, that's the way we work here. Okay, we have got number 13. One way to make sure to get yourself into Hell is to convince yourself that there is no God. And we're going to cover all this in a little bit more detail in a minute. Okay, number 13 is convince yourself there is no God. Number 12, do not believe in hell. Best way to get to hell is just, think there is no hell. And then the consequence of your thinking will inevitably get you to the place which you don't believe in exists. The next one is number 11. And number 11 is a common misnomer. It is right and it is wrong at the same time. And it's the idea that God is all love. He's this old man in the sky who is just kind and benevolent, and he will forgive all of us of whatever we have done. And we'll all go into heaven, and everything will be nice and beautiful. Again, we're going to look at the problem with this idea as well. So if you believe that God is all love and that's it, you'll be on your way to hell. And stick with me. We'll delve into this in a minute, and you will see what this is all about. The next one is number 10. We all come from monkeys. This is good old, I shouldn't say good old, this is pretty much bad old Darwin and Darwinism, where there used to be the soup turned into fish, the fish turned into animals, into mammals, the mammals turn into monkeys, and the monkeys turn into man. And it's quite shocking. I've just read an article about a orang-utan in Argentina who was given the status of a person, but as a non-human person. It's quite interesting. And this is all, where does all this madness come from? And the answer is it comes from the whole idea of where we come from and where our origins are. We're going to look at this in a minute as well. Truth is relative. That's number 9. Truth is relative. Yeah. Who knows what truth is? A bit like Pilate. What is truth? Yeah, he was asking the question, and he didn't know. But Jesus knew what truth is, and Jesus said of himself that he was the way, the truth, and the life. So there are many ways. And, the example which is always supplied, or very often supplied, is, what is truth? If you take an elephant, put him into a room, and then you take, 5 people and you turn off the light, and they can touch the elephant, and one will say the elephant is like the one who touches the trunk is like a big hose, and then somebody will contradict him and say, no, it's only like a very thin thing, and he was touching the tail. And another one would say, no, it's not like a hose at all, it's like a tree, and because he was touching the legs. Somebody else would say, it's like a piece of leather touching, whoever was touching the ears. And so truth is relative, and that's what many people believe today. It depends on which way you look at it. God can be this or can be something else. Now, if you have this attitude and you've got this concept in mind, the result of your thinking is going to take you right on to hell. So if you want to go to hell, that's what you need to stick to. There isn't a devil. And again, a lot of people, and I hear this quite often when I talk to people and say, oh, the devil is just an outdated, it's an antiquated concept, doesn't really exist, isn't really there. You don't need to worry about it. It's all just medieval, tales. And that's quite strange as well. It's quite strange when people say this sort of stuff. So there isn't a devil. If you want to go to hell, just embrace this idea and embrace this concept that there isn't a devil, and I'm sure you will end up in hell eventually as a result of the sum of your thinking. Ignore your spiritual state is the next one. There's inside of us, there's some spirituality, and we can just ignore it. We can deny that it exists, and we just try to live on the physical plane, and again, that will most certainly get you into hell. So if you want to go to hell, just ignore your spiritual state, ignore your soul, ignore the longing and the yearning of your spirit, and it'll take you to hell. The next one is also quite an interesting aspect. Talking about spirituality, we've got the two extremes. We've got one people say, oh yeah, it's just physical. What I cannot see, I don't believe in, and so on. And then other people, they go the extreme opposite, and they see sort of angelic creatures all over, and they want to talk to the angel, and they want to, have some spiritual experience here, or they go to a guru. And so they come to the conclusion that any spiritual experience, because it's spiritual and because it's supernatural, it must be truth. Met quite a few people like that. And it's sometimes quite scary and it's very hard to, to share with them the message of the gospel. It's quite difficult because they are full of it. They're full of their experience. And it's very hard to argue against experience. In the same way with me, I've got experience with Jesus Christ. It's very hard for anybody to argue against it. But we're going to look at this in a minute in a bit more detail. And but anyway, any spiritual experience is truth, and it goes unchecked, and you follow a false spiritual experience, it's going to take you right to the bottom, to the center of hell. Okay, then we've got the other option. It's just sort of a lot of people, and I've seen this in my family, I've seen this elsewhere, live, and we are number 5 now, live a middle of the road life. Just don't go crazy, don't go extreme, don't be a fanatic. You get born, you get married, you get some kids, you send them to school, you look after them, you have a job. In the morning, you go to work, you do your work. In the evening, you come home, you have something to eat, have a bottle of beer or a glass of wine, set yourself in front of telly, get tired, go to bed, get up in the morning, and the whole routine again. And one day you are old, and then you sit in your garden and you enjoy the green leaves, and then you die, and then life is over. Middle of the road life, and everything will be okay because you haven't done anything really bad. Maybe a little thing here and there, the odd white lie or whatever it may be, but you're not really, bad as such. So you shouldn't really end up in hell. You're just like most of the others, and where most of the others go, that's where you will go too. And the idea is that most of the others will probably go to heaven. Now, what I'm telling you is wrong. Live a middle of the road life, and you'll end up in hell. Don't worry about your destiny. You just do what everybody else does, and the result is going to be hell. Okay, let's look at number 4. Number 4 means, so it's all about being religious. Become religious, reach out, get in touch with God, go into jihad and kill yourself in the war for your God, or join a monastery and deny yourself a spouse, live a very hard life where you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you pray for 5 hours, you do a church service, you work yourself to the ground for just a piece of bread. And because you're denying yourself so extremely, God should be really proud of you, and you will go to heaven. And the answer is no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work. Becoming religious or being religious is a sure ticket to hell. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. We are down to number 3 in our hit list, and that one is join a cult, go extreme. There are lots of religions who tell you that they've got all the answers and that they will get you where you need to be and where you want to be. So become religious. Join a cult. Dedicate yourself to the cult. let your personality be changed and everything, and then you die, and what you'll find is you'll just be on your way to hell. Then number two, which is probably what most people do, simply don't care about it. You're living, live for the now, for the here and now. Don't live for tomorrow. Don't worry about death. Just don't care about hell. Just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And that will certainly get you into hell. So if you want to go to hell, just don't care about it, and you'll be there before you know it. And then we've got number one, and that's obviously the most severe one. Choose sin and choose the occult. Just sign yourself up for hell, and you can be sure that you're going to get there. Just a few ways to get there. No, there is a way to avoid hell and to overcome it. And right at the end, we're going to look at this way as well. And there's only one way, and it's quite narrow as well, really, this one way. But we're going to look at this way as well. But first of all, let us look at all the different options on how we can make sure we're going to end up in hell. Now, the first question is, or the first number 13 is, there is no God, just be an atheist. Personally, I think if you try to be an atheist, it takes an awful lot to believe that all this, what you see around you, including yourself, are just a product of chance. We're going to talk about evolution in a minute, that it just simply doesn't work. And there's a big problem in evolution. And evolutionists, they don't come up with any solutions. They just come up with speculation and big time frames, but they just don't know. They simply don't know. No, regardless of what you believe, when you look at the complexity of life, down to an individual cell, which was always thought to be stupid, but one of the cells in your body, there's more intelligence in any of these cells than, on the space mission when they try to get 2 men to the moon. And we know this today. Darwin didn't know this. He didn't have a clue because molecular science wasn't that much advanced. But today we know about this. And you look outside and you look at nature. Just challenge you next time you go outside, take a leaf and then take another leaf and look at the complexity. And if you understand a little bit of all the mechanisms and all the biological processes which take place in a simple leaf, which you pluck off a tree, it is absolutely amazing. And there you know straight away that there is a God. But anyway, some people say there isn't a God, and they console themselves with the thought, there is no God, so therefore I'm not accountable to anybody. Therefore, I don't have to worry about anything. And I've got a problem here. There either is a God or there isn't a God, and truth is absolute. There isn't a choice in truth. And I tell you, I use one example which I thought of earlier, was a cliff face. And when you go here in England, when you go to the coast, a lot of coasts on the East Coast, you haven't got beaches, you've got cliffs. So that's just a landscape, and it's just sheared due to erosion. And when you go right to the edge, it goes down for about 20, 30 meters, which is about 60 foot or something. So if you fall down, you're pretty much finished. And there are always warnings where it says, do not go anywhere near the cliff edge because of constant erosion. More and more of the land is eaten away. And it is a big danger that you fall down. Now, you can ignore this. And you can say, I don't believe in this. I see this long meadow, and I don't believe that it just stops over there and then there's a drop, a 10-meter drop going down to the beach or to where the water is, where the sea is. And you can just carry on running, and you don't stop, and you just run all the way over it. But truth is going to catch up with you. Whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it, whether you believe the warnings which are there not to go near the cliff edge, or you ignore the warning, you're going to fall down once you jump over or you try to walk beyond the cliff edge. And that's what a lot of people are doing today, that they're just saying, there is no God. We don't need to worry about anything. And then they die, and then it's all finished. Then it's all finished. And suddenly they realize, they're on their way to hell, and they're in a cell where they don't want to be, and they're just waiting for judgment whilst they're being tormented by whatever's down there in hell. Truth is absolute. Truth is absolute. There's no if or but or maybe not. It's absolute. And there either is a God or there isn't a God. If there isn't a God, which I think it's just a joke, people who say this. But if there is a God, I mean, if there isn't a God and I believe in God, there's no harm done. I don't feel that I'm losing out on life and believing that there is a God. On the contrary, I believe that my life has been incredibly enriched when I look my time before I became a Christian and after I became a Christian. But it's always the thing. The atheists have got a problem because they will be confronted with a living God. And don't believe the Pope when he tells you that if you live a good life, that will be credited to you as righteousness or something what he says. So you'll be making it, providing you try to be good and nice. It's a joke. There's only one way to God, and we're going to look at this in a minute. And if you don't take this way, your destiny is going to be hell. And by thinking that there is no God, you're going to make sure you're going to end up in hell, whether you believe in it or not. There's an atheist lobby, and I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute. And it's really bizarre what these guys are doing. You know, why do I advertise for something that I don't believe there is? Or lobby against something I believe it doesn't exist? Bit strange to me. Anyway, no God. We are a product of chance. There's no spiritual reality. And the result is that there's no moral really either. I mean, it's a problem as well. It's survival of the fittest. So it's okay if I kill and murder, if it's to my advantage and to the advantage of my species. Stalin said, you know, they're fooling us. There is no God. And we know what happened to Joseph Stalin and how he ran his country. And how many people have died on account of this doctrine. People always say, you know, religion is a cause for wars. Look at Stalin. He created a country without religion. And it's not just the enemies on the outside, you know, the Germans and, you know, the satellite countries who he perceived to be a threat, but it's on the inside as well. Many, many Russians, you know, his own people or Soviet citizens. I mean, he wasn't Russian, he was Georgian. But many of his own Soviet citizens, they went to the gulags and died a horrible death because of his doctrine. Some bizarre stuff, and I'm going to share this with you. I couldn't believe it. I saw it on a documentary. There's something like an atheist church in London. When you look at this photo, it actually looks like they are meeting in a church. So you get all these hip, modern, secular people. They play church. And they've got these assemblies, and they sit there and they sing songs, secular songs, of course. And then they talk about, you know, serving the community and being benevolent and all the rest of it. And they're all very enlightened as well. Again, you know, these guys are on their way to hell. Yeah. So if you want to go to hell, join this church. It's called the Sunday Assembly. And obviously God is taken out because in their opinion, he doesn't exist anymore. And he's superfluous. They don't want him anymore. They hate God. And ultimately, they're going to pay for it. It's very painful. But again, if you aim to go to hell, I encourage you to join the Sunday Assembly, the atheist church in London. Apparently, there's one in Manchester as well. They're coming up all over the country. Worse still, they're picking up church buildings. Maybe, you know, if there's a cross in there or some Christian emblem of some sort, maybe some of them get woken up, and they get woken up to a reality that there was a man 2,000 years ago who told us about God and who taught us about God. This is a London bus, double-decker bus, and they had an advertising campaign. You know those guys, they were saying they were like, who try to fight against something which they don't believe there is, that is God. And the campaign said, there's probably no God. No, stop worrying and enjoy your life. That's the campaign. There's only one little snack with this campaign and with this slogan, and that is expressed in 3 words. The 3 words are, but what if? But what if there is a God? What if you die? You're not really dead. And it's just your body that's dead, but you carry on, and suddenly you're confronted with this reality of God. Yeah. Very, very strange. Very, very strange indeed. There's not just probably a God, there is a God. And you have to deal with God, whether you want to or not. And one day you have to bow your knee before him, whether you want to or not. That is a gruesome reality. So on your way to hell, if you want to go to hell, and that God they don't believe exists, he actually gives them the freedom to deny his existence, and he gives you the freedom to make choices in your own life. You can love him and you can embrace him and you can come home to him, or you can reject him. That's your freedom. You can go to hell. And I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way. I'm just saying this, that you can go to hell because God is giving you the freedom to do so. He doesn't force you to be with him. He doesn't want conscripts. He only wants volunteers. Yeah. God doesn't want conscripts. He just wants volunteers. The devil, it's a different story. I mean, he doesn't mind volunteers if people are stupid enough to volunteer for him, but he wants conscripts. He wants slaves. Slaves he can torment and torture, and he can control. There is no hell is number 12 on our chart. The biggest and most successful deception. There is no hell. And again, I'm talking to people, people, secular people, sometimes also people who believe in God, and they just think, oh, hell, this isn't really today. It's just like an old concept, it doesn't really exist anymore. It's a medieval concept. It's a fable, and they used to use it to control people and to, create a, very difficult situation for people, so that they're fearful and they're really worried about it. And that's really what it's all about. Yeah. And so they come up with, I put this logo on here. If you listen to the radio station, it's there's a little smiley and it says smile, there is no hell. And underneath there's a script, a quote by Neil Anderson, not believing in hell doesn't lower the temperature down there 1 degree. That's by Neil T. Anderson. I don't know who he is, but anyway, he made this quote, and it's true. Truth is irrelevant of opinion. Truth is truth. And I happen to believe hell is real. And, not believing in it or believing in it doesn't make the slightest difference to what it is. There's a reality of hell. And this reality is there. And the deception is that there is no hell. And it's quite interesting as well. And I believe it's a ploy of the devil, who many people believe doesn't exist. It's a deception. And the deception goes in this way. If you don't believe that there is a hell, what is left? Then you've only got annihilation and heaven. So maybe we think that people, really buddies like Hitler and Stalin, assuming they haven't converted or they haven't repented before they died, that these guys, they are just evil. And, they are just going to be annihilated. Maybe they suffer a little bit or annihilated. I'm not quite sure what people think it happens, but pretty much everybody else, goes to heaven. Maybe there's something like purgatory or something like that, where, oh, you naughty, naughty boy, don't do this again, but welcome to heaven. And hell doesn't really exist, And again, partly it's quite interesting how this deception started. So we've got the biblical concept of hell, which is really gruesome, horrible. And we hear about darkness, about gnashing of teeth, about a fire that doesn't die down, about unbearable suffering, and then we come from there to people running around with a tricep, tormenting people, and then we come to having big orgies and big feasts in hell and so on. And so the whole thing goes more and more bizarre, and it goes away. And then in the end, it's so ridiculous what people think or believe what hell is all about, that the only conclusion is, surely there can't be a hell, because the medieval guys have got it so wrong, and that's just ridiculous. There can't be anything like that. So if there's no hell, then there's only heaven left over. And then we go to the next point as well. Do we need salvation if there is no hell? Do we need, for God to do anything? Do we need redemption? And do we need to sort of sort our lives out? Do we need to make sure we walk on the straight and narrow, that we do the right things and we don't do the wrong things? And then the answer is obviously no, we don't, because there is no hell. So what should we fear? we don't really need salvation because we're going to go to heaven anyway, because after this, we're all going to be better and we are less subject to sin and all that. And we'll all be with God and he'll just be there and he'll look after us and make sure that we're okay. So that's really the understanding people have. And when you think it through and its utter consequence, it's complete rubbish. It's nonsense. When you compare it to a biblical concept, it's nonsense as well. And when you go back to, who Jesus was, and most people would say, or these people who say this, they would say, oh yeah, Jesus was a good guy, good teacher, he healed the sick and he could feed people and, with very little food, he fed like thousands and he was just a really good guy, Nobody says anything bad about him. But then we look at, this good guy, he's been talking about hell 40 odd times, So what are we going to do with hell? If Jesus is a good teacher, what most people think, even if people don't believe in him, they've never heard about anybody saying that he was really evil and that Jesus was a wicked guy or something like that. I never heard this, But most people say, good guy, very enlightened, very clever and so on, and that's it. But if he deliberately lies about hell 40 odd times in the New Testament, then obviously there's something wrong with him. Personally, I believe he didn't lie. And personally, I believe that Jesus spoke the truth and nothing but the truth when he talked about hell and when he talked about the horrors of hell. It's more interesting. I don't know the exact figure, but he didn't talk anywhere near as much about paradise and heaven than what he talked about hell. He did talk about paradise, he did talk about heaven, but not as much as about hell and the need to avoid it and the need to get out of it. There is no hell. You want to go to hell, just believe there is no hell and you will end up there. Because the consequence is, if you believe there is no hell, there is no need for salvation, there is no need for redemption, there is no need for avoiding sin, there is no need of seeking God, because you're going to go there anyway. But the sure thing is, if you believe that good teacher, most people would say that he was a good teacher. I believe that he was God come into the flesh, maybe a bit different, but if you believe that he was a good teacher, then you better believe what he was saying as well. And he spoke a lot about hell, and he spoke a lot about the torments of hell, 40 odd times in the New Testament. We've got John Lennon as well, and this is where it all comes from. We've got the enlightened people, the New Age people, where you just get one with nature, embrace Buddhism, Nirvana, embrace Hinduism. You're going to get reborn, and you're going to have another chance, and you'll be your soul will go into another creature, and you will do all sorts of marvelous stuff, and so on. Now, John Lennon, he has sort of been embracing all this Far Eastern mysticism, and he was pushing this. And I remember this when I was little. You turn on the radio, and then these songs were piped down from morning till evening, and suddenly people start believing what these guys were singing. Now, you remember, maybe if you're my age, you will remember the song Imagine, and it goes, imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try, no hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Yeah. Okay, that's what he was singing. And this is like the verses which sort of were the Imagine song. I remember sort of years where you could hear it on the radio several times a day. And I could play the song here on YouTube, but I think I get the copyright mafia on my back. So it's not going to be played on YouTube here now. But this is a problem. I mean, these guys, they were piping this stuff out, this New Age doctrine way back in the 70s. The songs are still around today, and people get indoctrinated by them. I mean, I put my own little verse underneath them. Imagine this is all a lie, and tomorrow you will die. You think all is well, but you wake up in hell. Imagine you could have been in heaven today. That's not John Lennon, that's Michael saying this verse underneath there. I'm going to show you the whole lyrics in a minute, and some of the stuff is actually quite disturbing, and he was looking quite a long way into the future when he was composing this. I don't know whether this is evil inspiration or whatever it was with John Lennon, but anyway, it's quite disturbing. Okay, John Lennon, no hell, no heaven, everything is okay, just get one with nature and all this stuff. The problem is, if it is a lie, what he was talking about, and tomorrow you will die, there's no question about it. Not tomorrow physically, but tomorrow, like sometime in the future, you will die. Um, and many people think all is well, when they die because they haven't done really anything wrong, or, all this Christian stuff is just a lot of crazy talk and so on. But then you wake up in hell, and then you find out that you've missed it all. And you can imagine you could have been in heaven today. We hear the story. Jesus was talking about the rich man and poor Lazarus in the Bible. And the rich man, he ended up in hell, and Lazarus ended up in heaven. He was comforted. And the rich man, he knew why he was there. And he knew, because he ignored God, that he ended up in hell. And he could see heaven as well. And he could see what he could have had if, he had just, turned his life not around money, not around mammon, but he would have, made sure that he was looking for Christ and for the word of God, or for the prophets and the Torah. Okay, so we've got the full lyrics here from John Lennon. I'll let you look at it for a moment, and I'm just going to comment on it. So it starts off with, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. You forget about tomorrow, forget about your future, forget about your destiny. That's what he's encouraging you to do. Just live for the day, and you run into your demise, into your eternal demise, if you do so. He goes on and he says, imagine there's no countries, it isn't hard to do, nothing to kill, to die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, and I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions, I wonder if you can, no greed, no need for greed or hunger, a brotherhood of men. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one. It's quite disturbing what this guy is saying here. Very, very disturbing, I think. And when you look at what is happening today, and it's a subject for another time, but you look at the New World Order, you look at the One World People, the UN, where you find a definitive effort of uniting religion, turning all religions into one, and uniting the world as one as well, under one government. It's very, very scary. The Bible has been prophesying about this. I said that this is going to happen, but that the guy at the top is, this is the scary thing. It's not going to be a good guy, but it's going to be a bad guy. And that's always a problem when you unify something here on the world and you put too much power into one hand. You will find that this power inevitably gets abused. And this is a very, very scary scenario. Now, we know the outcome of John Lennon. He died. He was murdered, shot. And I wonder where he is now. Again, I mean, I hope with all my heart that he did find truth before he was murdered, and that he did find Christ, but I don't know. I just hope. The next big lie is, which is going to get you into hell, is that God is all love. And please hear me out. God is all love is not a lie. That's the truth. But all meaning, there is nothing else. And what we need to understand is that God is love, and he is righteous, he is good. And there are two characteristics which are infinite within God. There's infinite love, and there's infinite righteousness and holiness. And what people tend to forget is they go with the love part. That's okay. So God loves you, and he's really good. But they don't go with the righteousness part. No, if God is infinitely righteous, and if he is infinitely holy, then there is a need for you to also be righteous and to be holy in order to be together with God. And that is a big issue, and people leave this little bit out. So the lie which gets you into heaven, into hell, is God is just love, nothing else. He's just love. He's a good old guy in the sky who's gonna get you there, when you die, and he's just gonna get you up and be, everything is fine, everything is hunky-dory. But the problem is, what people forget is God is righteous, and there's something like the wrath of God as well over all unrighteousness. And I'm going to come to the solution right to the end of this talk. But you need to always bear this in mind. There are two elements to God's character which are very, very important for you to understand. One of them is love. The other one is righteousness. Now, in his love, he's provided a way for you to deal with the righteousness part. Now, if you come before God as you are, and it doesn't matter whether you're Mother Teresa, you are the Pope, you are somebody who has denied himself, to the brim, who has been sacrificial in everything you've ever done in your life, you're a really good person. It doesn't matter. If there's one little bit of sin in there in your life, you've got an issue with God's righteousness. And the only thing I can, the only comparison I can draw is when I looked at when I look at a curtain, a white curtain window on my window, which was really nice and white and so on, like a net curtain for the window. And I thought it was okay, and I didn't wash it for quite a long time. Then one day, the sunlight was hitting this curtain, and I could see all the dirt which was in there. I could see that it really needed washing. And that's sometimes as well, when we've got the infinite light of God, and we've got our righteousness, which is deficient, in this light, it'll just stand out like anything. And we will condemn ourselves because we cannot stand within this light, with the unrighteousness which is within our lives. Okay, we're gonna look at this in a minute, a bit more detail as well. Okay, the next big lie is we come from monkeys. And again, if you believe this, that we come from monkeys, inevitably it's going to get you into hell. Now, people say evolution is the truth, and this makes the Bible to be a lie. As simple as that. If you believe one, then the other one is pretty much the consequence. Either evolution is right or the Bible is right. Can't be both. And I don't, trust these guys. I mean, they are making all sorts of compromises to try to, evolution is right, but God was in on the act and stuff like that. It doesn't add up. There's a lot of other aspects in the Bible as well which don't add up. What we find though in society, and again, this is going to get you into hell, and that there's a blind belief in science. And this belief in science is, it's just, how shall I say? It is blind. It is trusting so-called scientists, with everything. So they should have the answer, and everything they say should be right. Then I hear a lot of also, intelligent people who say, okay, we know that science, there are sometimes problems, but that's the reason why we've got peer review. Yeah. So they talk a lot about peer reviews. That means scientist comes out with an idea, he develops it, and then another scientist looks at the evidence presented, and then he either agrees with it or disagrees with it, or makes suggestions to change the research. What people tend to forget is that very often there's some sort of consensus, and you find this consensus in every organization, in every group, in every community. And if you go against the consensus, you don't get your thesis through, as simple as that. And so, for example, today in the scientific community, if you present evidence which would destroy the theory of evolution, it would simply not be recognized. Or it would be ignored. If you profess to be a scientist who doesn't adhere to some of the beliefs this community has, then you are ejected from this community. And so a lot of people who don't believe what is presented, they don't voice their opinions, and they don't make them loud. And that's the reason why sometimes errors, they are carried through for a long time. I mean, we have known within science, especially with advances in research technology, that many strange ideas and strange concepts were being adhered to for a long time, for a long time, for sometimes for centuries, even up to the point when they were well disproven, even well beyond this, and then gradually they went away from that because the evidence was just too overwhelming. And I'm thinking about stuff which creationists use as well, like the speed of light being a constant, which for about 100 years it has been suggested that this is not the case and that the speed of light is not a constant. Now we find that the speed of light is a constant, and then about 100 years ago there were sort of some research going into this saying it's not a constant. And as technology gets more and more precise, it can actually be proven that it seems to change, that the speed of light seems to change, and that it certainly isn't a constant. And the scientific community is slowly adopting it. It's quite interesting what's happening there, even with like the holy grail of certain aspects. Now, the point I'm making here is, you believe you come from monkeys. That means that God, when God became flesh, he was nothing but an evolved animal, which means he couldn't really die for your sins, which means the whole aspect of redemption isn't there. Also, it goes further. If our origin isn't in God, then where's our destiny going to be? It's not going to be in God either. And that's really the result of what Darwin came up with. And when you look at the origin of species and the arguments he's making in there, he's observing small changes in species, and the rest is just contrived. It's speculative at best, and yet it's blown into something which is blown totally out of proportion to whatever Darwin suggested. And the research that's gone into it is completely mad, totally unproven. And yet you've got people with very elaborate theories, having studied this stuff for years on end. And obviously, if I come along and I present a couple of arguments which destroys evolution within a second, the theory of evolution within a second, they either deny that I'm telling the truth for the stuff that's been found, or they simply say it cannot be because it can't be in their opinion. And that's really what we are dealing with now. Belief in evolution, go to hell. That's pretty much the logic here. If you believe in evolution, you will find that that your destiny is not going to be heaven, is going to be hell. It's quite serious, actually. I've got one picture here on the slide. If you listen via the radio, you won't be able to see the picture. And there's Darwin and Hitler, and there's a direct link as well. Hitler professed his philosophy of the survival of the fittest, directly taken from Darwinism, which was not that long before him, really. Just I think it's less than 100 years, and we know what's happened with Hitler, and the same as well when we look at the dialectic materialism. Stalin and his world, and Lenin and his world. The amount of death which resulted from this fatal misconception is absolutely phenomenal, and that on its own should warn us of teaching an idea and a philosophy which denies the existence of God, and tries to make us believe that we are the origin, that our origin is in monkeys and in apes and in the so-called missing links in animals, in bacteria or whatever. The answer is very clear. We have been created by God. We have been created in the image of God. And with this, we've got responsibility straight away. And we come from God, and ultimately we're going to go to God as well. And we're going to have to face God, whether we want to or not. Okay, we've got postmodernism. That's the next stage. If you want to go to hell and you try to make sure that you end up in hell, postmodernism is the next concept here. If it feels good, it must be good. If it's right for you, then it's good. There is no absolute truth. Truth is relative. That's what postmodernism is all about. There's no absolute truth. We've got I've got a graphic here. We've got pre-modern, which is just a dot. All knowledge is consolidated. Then we've got modernism, which is upward and forward, and then we've got postmodernism, which is just like a lot of squiggles, and suggesting that it's all over the place. There's no absolute reality, no absolute truth anymore. We've got a slide here which talks about modernity and postmodernity. The modern age, I'm just going to read it off for you, just for our radio listeners. It's production, it's community life, it's about social class, it's about family, it's a belief in continuity and situation, a role of education, a one-way media, overt social control, nationhood, science-aided progress, and finding the truth. That's modern age. And now we've got the postmodern age, and it's all about consumption, fragmentation or individualism, identity from other sources, families, many options, single parent, multi-parents, polygamy, and so on. Breakage with past, with tradition, education for what? We've got the duality of media, so you've got choice and interchange, covert control, interesting as well, CCTV, etc. So you're controlled right to the limit. In the modern age, it was overt social control. So the community was making sure that you were walking the line. Everything is global, so it's not to do with nationhood anymore. And in postmodernism, we have got science is only a source, is only one source of knowledge. So there's a plurality of truth now. Truth is relative. That is what postmodernism is all about. As I said before, truth is not relative. There is absolute truth, and very easy way to try it out. If you take a brick and you hold it over your foot and you let it go, the brick is going to go down, it's going to hit your foot, and you're going to suffer pain. There's no other truth in that. There's absolute truth. And don't believe the lie that there is a plurality of truth, or the concept of anything which feels good is good. The next lie, which will get you into hell, is there is no devil. And that's a big problem as well. One of the arguments I've heard very often about the existence of God is, why is there so much evil in this world? And I had one guy, as a friend of mine, just when I became a Christian, and he was on the brink of really giving his life to Christ. And anyway, he went past the hospital, and there was a little girl in an accident, and she was flown in by a helicopter, and I think she died. So it's a very tragic story. And his big argument was, if God can allow this to happen, I can't believe in that God. God must be evil. I can't believe in him. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. If we assume there is no devil, and yet we see evil in this world, we see, really horrible stuff taking place in this world, where does it come from? And then the ultimate solution, or the only answer, possible answer, is ultimately must come from God, because there's no devil, and there is no, evil in a personified evil as such. And so we've got like this really badly flawed logic that therefore, or these people think therefore, there can't be a God, because there's so much evil and so much bad stuff happening in this world. And obviously this problem comes from assuming that there isn't a devil. Now, we need to understand, and we need to come to an understanding that there is a devil, and the devil is real. It's a person. He is God's opponent. He is out there to destroy mankind. He is there to get mankind away from a loving God and to lead them to destruction through lies, through deceit, through violence, through murder, through all sorts of methods which are available to him. And it's important to not fall for this lie. And also, if we preach the gospel, or we communicate the word of God, we need to make people understand that the devil is real, that there is a person that's opposing God, and that he has got an empire. And Jesus calls him the prince of this world in one instance. And even, when Jesus was tempted, I find it quite interesting, this story. When Jesus was tempted, the devil came to him and he said, look at all my empires. Look at everything I have. I will give it to you if you bow down and worship me. That's what the devil said to Jesus. And Jesus said, you shall only worship the Lord thy God alone, and him alone. And And he didn't contest that the devil had all these empires, that he had all this at his disposal, and it was within his rights to give it all over to Jesus. He didn't contest it, but he acknowledged that indirectly. And so I think the point we have to make here is that the devil is real. I mean, Jesus considered the devil to be real, and Jesus, what he says sticks. I think that's the ultimate. And we need to, if Jesus considered the devil as a real person, who was tempting him, who was there, then we should do the same as well. We shouldn't deny him. So denying the existence of the devil is a sure ticket to hell. If there's no devil, then we've got a problem with our understanding of God, with all the evil that's in this world. And then the result is that ultimately it's the same question with if there's no hell, then we don't need redemption, we don't need salvation. So ultimately we're going to end up in hell. We need to understand there is a devil, there is a hell. And it's a problem. The next one is quite interesting, and it's and I find this very often with New Age people, and I've spoken to a lot of them, and their thing is it's about a spiritual experience. And you find this all over. You find this with people talking to the dead, with necromancers and so on. So they get some sort of spiritual experience, and because they've got this experience, they say this must be truth. And again, it's very, very difficult to argue with them, because how can you argue against subjective experience they've had? So rule number one is not everything which is spiritual or supernatural is the truth. Some of it may be just a lie, and it may be from the other side. I mean, there are spiritual experiences with God, and you will experience God once you surrender your life to Christ, and you make a start. You have a relationship with Jesus Christ. You will have spiritual experience. But I know a lot of guys who've got spiritual experience, very, very deep spiritual experience, and amazing stuff as well when you look at it from the outside. But all it is just demonic. It's evil. It's from hell, and ultimately these experiences will lead people into hell. And again, you have to be careful. I was talking to a friend of mine from Moldova recently, and he was telling me that he was leaving his body. So he opened up, and he didn't like to talk about it, but we were talking about God, about spiritual stuff. And he was saying that he was actually, astral projecting himself. So he was going all over the place when, at night when he was sleeping, he was leaving his body and doing this. And he had this deep spiritual experience. All I could do is just warn him and say, whatever's happening is not good. Stay away from that. See Christ. Again, he wouldn't listen. To him, this was so great, so important, so super. He was just totally absorbed by that. And because it was spiritual, as far as he was concerned, it was truth and it was good, and therefore it must be from God. We need to test things, and we need to, as Christians, we need to go back to the Word of God, bring everything we experience into context. At the same time, open ourselves up for the Holy Spirit, for the Spirit of God, and look for discernment as well to understand what's going on here. So spiritual experience must be the truth. If you believe this, and you engage into New Age, you engage into necromancy, and you engage into other things, sure ticket to hell. Last point I'm going to make, and then we're going to move on to the next slide. I was watching at some time sort of people. There was one guy, he was a medium, and he was, heading a group of people there, mostly women. Interestingly, I think there was just one bloke. And he was suddenly getting all these revelation of allegedly dead people talking to him. And some of the stuff which came out was really intimate, it was really spot on. And, some lady started crying, and they said, oh, that's my mum, and so on. And all the information which came out was information he couldn't possibly know, but only that person who was sitting there knew, and obviously the dead mother as well. No, it's quite interesting. So they got a message, everything is wonderful here. You don't have to worry when you die. Everything is nice. Everything is good, and so on. And that was the message which was pumped out. And obviously people get excited by this stuff. They watch this guy, and they get assured that when they die, everything is going to be wonderful. They're not going to go to hell. it's so nice and so beautiful and so on. Take a step back and think what's going on there. Jesus talks about the devil of being a liar and being, the father of lies, and his hordes with him. They are they are liars too. They are just his servants, his fallen angels. They are liars too. And it doesn't take much for them to see what kind of sweater they were wearing at a certain day, at a certain party, and what was said at a certain place, certain party. I mean, these guys, these creatures, they are highly intelligent and they can retain this information. They come to some event, where they've got this medium, and they splurt all this stuff out and they reassure people. And from then on, their lives has changed. They do this after interview and they say, oh yeah, my life has changed. I'm so happy now, and all the rest of it. The problem is they're going to die. They're going to die thinking they're going to go to a better place where all the relatives are. And reality is they will go to hell. They will go to hell and they will suffer for it because they believed this deception more than they believed the word of God, more than they believed Jesus Christ. They will end up in hell. Tragedy, absolute tragedy when I look at this stuff and when I look at this deception being pumped through our television screens into our living rooms. I met a couple of these guys as well, and again, this is a sure ticket to hell. What you cannot see cannot be. And I met a couple of guys and say, I believe only in what I see, and I sort of wanted to say to them is that you better switch off your electricity because can't see it, can you? Yeah, it's just a piece of wire. You don't see the electrons going through it. You should really stop using electricity because you don't believe in it, and therefore you should stop doing it. But anyway, this argument doesn't sit with them because they say, oh yeah, but you can see the result of electricity and so on. In the same way, you can make the argument, you can see the result of God being here and God maintaining this universe. And when you look at some of the precision, just in astromechanics, anything being out by 1 degree would pretty much finish life here on Earth as we know it. And it's absolutely amazing. You can see in every aspect of life, in every aspect of, the way the world runs and the way we understand the world, that there is God behind it all to hold it all together. So anyway, this can lead us, if we come to this conclusion, I'm physical, I'm just, whatever I see is what I believe in. If I don't see it, I don't believe in it. That's pretty much ignoring our spiritual state. And we are a triune creature, soul, body, soul, and spirit. And if we ignore our spiritual state, our soul as well, then obviously we're not going to get anywhere, really. And one day we're going to die. And thinking that, like a colleague of mine once said, when he dies, he thinks it's like turning the light off. It's all finished, it's gone. It won't be gone. You will rise up, you will probably see your body still lying there, lifeless, but you'll be more alive than ever before. And then the next stage is you will wake up in hell if you don't, get your act straight with God. People trust in physical science only. Again, they've got this blind trust in science, blind trust in the media very often. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Put your head in the sand, but you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to, come to an understanding of the truth. You really need to look out and you need to see where the truth is. That's all you can do once we're here on earth, and to, come to peace with God. Be a middle of the road person. There's a lot of people as well. They say, oh, I'm not killing anybody. I'm not stealing. I'm not, cheating anybody. I'll be okay. When I die, I've never done anything wrong and it'll be okay. I met one guy where I was working in the steelworks many, many years ago. And he said something to me which took me by surprise. We were talking about God, and he was saying, and that was his sense of righteousness, that he's never, ever thrown any food away. And I thought, what? And I was completely flabbergasted at the time. And I thought, what has this got to do with God? But I understand it. After the war years, food was very, very short in supply. A lot of people were starving, and it was like a sacrilege if you threw some food away. So, and I remember my grandparents, they had the same mentality. They never threw any food away. It was like really, really bad if you did this. Biblically, it's no statement to either effect, either being good or being bad or whatever. But they never threw any food away. And sometimes even if it was gone off, they would still eat it. And one of my granddads, he almost died because he was eating food which was rotten, but he didn't dare to throw it away. And you think there's something not quite right with this understanding. But that is sometimes where, people think, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not, going this way or that way. I'm not extreme. I'm not a fanatic. I'm not very religious, but I'm not hating God either. I'm okay with God. He is there. I'm here. I live my life. He lives his. And this is the sort of attitude, the middle of the road attitude. Do what everybody else is doing. Don't, end up in prison. Keep your nose clean, and then everything will be okay. Now, the message for you is if you want to go to hell, just be a middle of the road person. Jesus said some stuff. If you don't love me more than your wife, your children, your parents, you're not worthy of mine, of Jesus. That's what he said. It's quite extreme. It's quite fanatic. And really, that's what you need to do. You need to love Jesus more than anybody. Your family, your kids, your wife, your husband. It's radical, absolutely radical. So middle of the road doesn't do here. And if you want to do middle of the road, you'll be on. It's going to be the road to hell. The middle of the road person. The middle of the road. Become religious. That's the other one. We got people, they become really religious. They make an effort on their terms to meet God. And what do? They maybe go to jihad if they're Muslims. They go to an extreme. They do something extreme. They surrender their lives, and they hope, they're going to go straight to God. Little do they know when they wake up and they don't get the 72 virgins, but they're in a tiny cell and they're suffering the torment of hell. What else? Others, some people, they become Christians, but they don't really have a relationship with Jesus Christ, but they just do the Christian thing. They read the Bible, they go to church, sometimes 3 times a week. They, they do all the prayers, they do all the tithing and all the other bits, people tell them what they ought to do, but it doesn't make them a Christian. Going to church doesn't make you a real Christian. It just makes you religious, really. The only thing which makes you a real Christian is relationship with Jesus Christ. Many religions, they're all about earning points, which eventually will get you out of hell. So like in Islam, they tell you, you've got your good deeds and your bad deeds, and they all weigh against one another, and you go, over this big chasm, over this bridge, and if your bad deeds, are more than your good deeds, then you go down to hell. Now, the problem we have in Christianity is that God says, I want you to be holy, 100% holy, so no bad deeds at all. If you do a bad deed, there's no number of good deeds which can outweigh the bad deeds. So we've got a real problem in being religious. Being religious simply doesn't work. That's the answer. The only thing which works, and we're going to come to this later as well, is relationship, real living relationship with God through Jesus Christ. That's the only way that works. Becoming religious is, forget about it. Doesn't do it. The next thing is a don't care attitude. I don't care. That will get you to hell for sure. I don't care about hell. I don't care about heaven. I don't care about God or the devil or anything. I just do whatever I do now. I enjoy life. I've got life to the max. I think there was this Pepsi Max advert some time ago, which is, max it out or live to the max, life to the maximum. And that's how many people live. They think about today, a bit like what John Lennon is saying. Don't worry about heaven. It's only above. There's no hell below, no heaven above. It's only sky, we have to worry about. And just live for today, live for the moment, enjoy your life, do whatever you want, don't care. If you do something which isn't quite right or a bit naughty, just make sure you don't get caught. And that's pretty much the attitude we find today. And the answer is it'll get you to hell. I'm going to tell you one story. And I heard the story back in Germany. And it was a story about 4 young lawyers. And the area where I was working was full of steelworks. And it happened in the area. So there were lawyers, they just graduated from university and they were just setting out in life. Everything was in their favor. They're now looking at earning big money after 4, 5, 6 years of study. They're now looking at big money, big careers, nice cars, nice family, nice houses. Everything was super. And these guys, they were just on the way to work, and it was foggy. There's a lot of fog, so you couldn't see very fast, but they had a good car, nice Mercedes and stuff. And there was a big lorry with a long steel girder. And he went to one of the factories in the area, and the gate, unfortunately, was closed. So he couldn't really reverse, and it was, at night. So he was just trying to get the porter to open the gate for him. And in this moment, whilst the steel girder was, stretching from one side of the road to the other, these 4 lawyers sitting in the Mercedes didn't see this in time, and they went right underneath the steel girder, which was suspended on, one part of the truck and the trailer. And the top bit of the car was taken off, and all 4 of them were beheaded at that time. And that's the reality of life. We never know when we're going to die. These guys had everything going for them, and within an instant, they didn't even have time to think about it. They were taken out of life. Within an instant, they were transported into eternity. And I don't know anything about these guys personally, so I don't know whether they were Christians, they were not Christian. I mean, the area where I was a very Christian area, so there were loads of, Bible-believing Christians in the area. So I don't know. I don't know. But the lesson it told me is that it is very serious. Yeah, you never know when your hour is coming. There's no guarantee that you'll hit old age, and so even if you're here now, you should care. You should, because you never know how much time you've got. You should care about God right now, wherever you are. You should surrender your life to Him. Well, the next option is you can join a cult. If you want to go to hell and you want to make sure you end up in hell, join a cult. That's a very sure way of doing so. You give up your personality, you stop thinking, you don't think about anything anymore. You've just got your leader who does all the thinking for you. You turn into a worker bee. You can abdicate all responsibility for your life, and you just follow the leader blindly. And potentially you'll even die for your leader. And we've got Charles Manson here. I mean, he's just an animal, that guy. We've got Applewhite, I think was his name. Applewhite here, who had his Heaven's Gate people and who persuaded them all to commit suicide because he thought he had cancer when they did an autopsy on him. Actually, he didn't have cancer, so there was no need for him to kill himself and all his followers. And then we've got Jim Jones, who completely lost it in a fit of paranoia and got a couple of thousand people to kill themselves. And in Guinea, Guyana, sorry, not in Guinea, in Guyana, strange, absolutely strange. And people fall for these guys. It's horrendous. But join a cult, sure way to go to heaven. Then the last one is, and this is number 1 in our list, and there are a lot of people doing this as well, and they do this for the wrong reasons. They do this for money. They do this because they are fascinated by the occult. They deliberately choose hell. Many people have got a wrong idea, and they think, and when you talk to some of them, that's actually what they think. They think that God is really mean and mean-spirited, and he wants to keep us stupid, and that, Satan or Lucifer, that he is the enlightened one. He gives knowledge. And with this knowledge, we can better our lives. And therefore, they deliberately follow him because they believe that everything else is a lie. So they choose hell. Other people think that hell is just going to be one long party, whereas heaven, you just sit on a white cloud and play the harp, and it gets a bit boring. So hell is just a place of indulgence, of fun and indulgence. Again, have a look at what Jesus is saying. It's a place of torment. Don't believe the lies of these guys. And then there's something else as well, which you find in some of the old religions, where homage to hell or to the occult or to evil creatures is done in the hope of getting a better deal when they are dead. So they understand, okay, getting to heaven is really, really difficult, or that's what they understand, or dealing with this God of heaven and earth, or the God of the universe, is pretty tough. So they decide they may as well just, try and strike a deal with the guys below, where they probably end up. And when you look at Egyptology and a couple of other religions, it seems to be that way, that these guys are deliberately paying homage to the devil and to his empire, with the aim to get a better deal when they get there, when they go there after death. No, news is pretty bad. It's deception. It doesn't work. Okay, this is our hit list about hell, and let's have a look what hell is all about. Jesus talked about hell over 40 times in the New Testament. And again, to all those people who say hell is an antiquated concept, it wasn't antiquated for Jesus. And if you believe in Jesus and you accept that he was a good teacher, which strangely enough, most people do, even though they don't accept him as their savior, they still would make a statement to that effect. Then you have to come to one conclusion, and that is that if Jesus is real and if he was a good teacher and you can trust what he is saying, then hell is real too. And we've got a couple of descriptions in the Bible. We've got a lake of fire, bottomless pit, a horrible tempest, devouring fire, a place of sorrows, place of weeping, a furnace of fire, place of torments, where they will wail, where God is cursed, the people revile God, where there is no rest, a place of outer darkness, where they scream for mercy, where they can never repent, a place of everlasting punishment, where they gnaw their tongues, where they feel the wrath of God, a place of everlasting destruction, a place for the devil and his angels, where the fire never goes out, a place of everlasting burnings, where they don't want their loved ones to come. It goes further, where the worm doesn't die, place of howling, and so on, so on, so on. So it's a lot of scriptures in the Bible about hell, and we should take them seriously and also warn those who are on their way to hell. How to get out of hell? Now, the answer is not religion, not atheism, not occult, no fake spirituality, no indifference, no middle of the road stuff, but the only thing which will get you out of hell is the truth. And let's have a look. And I'm going to leave it on this. Jesus said of himself that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one comes to God except through him. No one comes to God except through him. Quite radical what Jesus is saying there. You can read this in John, Gospel of John. If you believe in him, you will not see death, but you will have moved over from death to life. That's another proverb Jesus said. So it's believing on Jesus and what he has done. And Jesus made a big statement about hell as well, and that the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And there Jesus is talking about his church, the group, the community of true believers who come to an understanding and to a knowledge of him. Now, I'm going to sum this up now and wind up this little presentation. Now, Jesus said, now the concept we've got in the Bible is that Jesus died on the cross for you, that he gave his life for you, that God became flesh, he came on this earth, he walked on this earth, he lived a perfect life, he never sinned once, he was righteous in everything, and despite his righteousness, he was nailed to the cross, and all the sin, my sin, your sin, was placed upon him. And he paid with his blood for your sin and for my sin. And if you accept it, and if you accept that Jesus has done this for you, then you can have eternal life. You can enter into a relationship with God. As far as God is concerned, you are pure, you're holy, you're good. There's no unrighteousness inside of you because he's placed the righteousness of Jesus Christ upon you. And that is the love of God. There's this, remember when I said at the beginning of the talk, there's this concept about God being all love and God being all righteousness, and God being all righteous. Now, the love of God will, God yearns for you to be together with him. He yearns to shower his love upon you, but the righteousness of God will stop you from getting anywhere near him. And so the answer for that was Jesus Christ. He placed all the punishment you deserve, I deserve, on him. And if you trust him and you believe in him that he has taken the punishment upon himself, then you can be righteous before God through Jesus Christ. And then when Jesus says that no one comes to God except through him, it's literal. You cannot come to God, you cannot go anywhere near him unless you have accepted what Jesus has done for you. And life will open up. You will have... you would suddenly find that the love of God is poured out into your heart, that there's a real relationship between you and God, and that the barrier that was there before between you and God has been taken away, and you know, the veil to the most holy, as it was in the temple in Jerusalem, has been split in two, and you've got access to God himself. It's amazing stuff, and I want to encourage you to really you know, go this way, to take this route, and to not grow weary or lax in it. Now, there are many ways taking you to hell. I mean, Jesus talks about the narrow way and the broad way. And the broad way leads to distraction, and there are many on it. And the narrow way leads to eternal life, and only few find it. Many are called, but few are chosen. That's what Jesus said. Make sure that you are one of the, not just one of the called ones, but that you are one of the chosen ones, you know, who respond to the call of Christ, to come to him, to surrender your life to him, to surrender your sin at the feet of his cross, and to accept him as your Lord and Savior. Okay, God bless. Thank you for listening to this talk. Feel free to leave a comment. You can get in touch with us at www.seismicradio.org. Email is info@seismicradio.org. God bless and bye-bye.